So I honestly expected to be let down by the Nintendo Switch 2, but it's actually a much better console than I think a lot of people give it credit for. And I want to just help anybody that's thinking about purchasing a Switch 2 to manage their expectations a little bit, because if you come into it with the right mindset, this is actually a really good console for a few different reasons. Now let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. No, the Switch 2 is not going to compete with your PS5. It's not going to compete with a well-outfitted gaming PC. It's not going to produce better graphics than an Xbox. But in my opinion, it's not trying to do any of those things. While the Switch 2 doesn't necessarily have the largest library of games, it does still have some really fantastic games that are on it and that are going to be coming out on it most likely, that can be played on the go without taking up a bunch of space. So it's easy for us to criticize this console and say, oh, look at the graphics. It doesn't look as clean as a PS5. It doesn't look as good as on my PC, or whatever. But think about it this way. This little thing right here is able to let you play Resident Evil Requiem, Cyberpunk, and a bunch of other titles that are honestly a lot of fun. And while no, the graphics are not going to be up to par with those other consoles, it's still going to give you the same experience of playing through the game, having a bunch of fun, and experiencing the storyline of all these different games that we all love and want to play. This is an original Game Boy DMG right here. This is kind of the footprint difference. They're not that far off in size. The Switch 2 is much thinner. So let's weigh the Switch 2 with no Joy-Cons real quick. 424 grams is what the Switch 2 comes out to be. The Game Boy DMG with 4 AA batteries, 315 versus 424-ish. So this is essentially just a little bit more than 100 grams more without the Joy-Cons. Now, when you run the Joy-Cons, you're obviously going to add some weight here. You're looking at 557 grams. And this Switch 2 has a screen protector installed, which adds just a tiny little bit of weight, but not much. So for something that's almost as easy to carry around and handle as a Game Boy, this thing gives us the ability to play through a bunch of really good titles, whether you're on the go or you just don't have a lot of space at the house or whatever. This is a surprisingly powerful console. If you're trying to decide whether or not this is the right gaming console for you, I'm just going to run through a couple scenarios where this might actually make sense for you and a couple scenarios where it's not going to make sense. So let's start with the situations where this might not be the right console. If you have no intention of playing video games on the road, if you don't travel a lot, there's really not much of an incentive for you to pick this up if you're concerned with the graphics and that type of thing. And then if you're an enthusiast that really cares about the graphics and playing each game in its just most advanced form, this is also not going to do that for you. If you already own like a high-end gaming PC or a PS5 or an Xbox or whatever, and you just want to try this console out, you're probably going to be let down if you plan on playing this in docked form. And then if you're a non-casual gamer that cares about all the bells and whistles of modern gaming devices, this might not be your cup of tea. However, if you are a busy adult or young person that wants to be able to play your console on your break at work or even at the gym. I know this sounds silly, but sometimes I'll literally take my Switch to the gym to do cardio on the treadmill. It's absolutely fantastic for things like that. I even played through a large portion of Resident Evil Requiem on a long flight into one of my jobs for work, and it was just so much nicer to be able to play a current game that I was already working on at home and to just pick up right where I left off, literally on an airplane. Another benefit of a console like this is if you're just a casual gamer and you want to be able to move this throughout different parts of your house and you don't really have like a dedicated gaming room or whatever, this is perfect, because even if you play it only in docked form, this is super easy to fit on the entertainment center behind the TV. The dock is really not that big, and I've actually been pretty impressed with just how well the thing performs for what it is. Now again, if you play this side by side with a PS5, you're gonna notice the difference 100%, hands down. But if you're just trying to have the overall experience of the game and you're not super nitpicky, this is still gonna do really well for you. And then if you're like me and you're not super concerned about playing a game right when it comes out, the Switch 2 is probably gonna start getting more and more games. But what I have noticed is that it has taken a while for some of the games that have been out for years on other platforms to be brought over to the Switch 2. That said, the Switch 2 is still a pretty new console, and a lot of those games just would not have run on the original Switch. But I was pretty impressed when Resident Evil Requiem was released on the Switch 2 pretty much right alongside with all of the other platforms. So I do think we are going to see developers working to put out their games on this console as time goes on. And this is a really well-selling console, so there's an incentive for them to port those games over to the Switch 2. Now, I'm not saying everybody should just run out and buy a Switch 2, but if you're the type of person that falls into the category that I just mentioned of a casual gamer that wants to play relatively modern stuff on the go and doesn't want to pack anything that's much bigger than an original Game Boy DMG, this is such a good console and it's exceeded my expectations. I initially bought this because I wanted to play a lot of Nintendo platformers like Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, and a few other titles. But as I've gone through and started playing, Resident Evil 7, Requiem, and then I also just ordered Resident Evil 8, that should be here in a couple days, I've really grown to appreciate this console for what it is. So these are just my thoughts, and you gotta understand that I am a very casual gamer. I'm not somebody that takes this real serious. I just like to play here and there, 30 minutes after work, an hour before bed, something like that. I just view these as games that are there to help me relieve stress and to just kind of have a little bit of enjoyment and decompress after a long day. If you're a Switch 2 owner and there's games that you've found work actually really well on the Switch 2 that you were surprised by, I'd love to hear about them. But until next time, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me.